Welcome to our radio show, The Way, the Truth, the Life. So now I entered new period of my monastic life. Of course I was still a novice, but deep in myself I've seen myself as a monk. So now I've seen that this most terrible part of this almost hopeless combat and fight with tears is slowly approaching to its end. But although it was not yet finished, but the end was on the horizon. I could see it. I could see it is possible. So it gave me great strength to proceed further on. But after meeting with this holy elder Ephraim, I have definitely understood that to me it is extremely important to go back to Europe, whether Greece or Serbia, and to give myself up to certain spiritually more experienced man. And because I have seen that it is very dangerous to proceed in spiritual way without experienced guide, and this could be for me really deadly, and I was on the verge of losing my mind. So I finally made a decision that I have to leave United States for good and to go back to Serbia or to Greece. So actually I thought that it would be best for me to go to Mount Athos, to Holy Mountain. There are many monasteries, great number of monks, and among them there should be definitely enough experienced elders, and among them that I could maybe choose one for me to be my spiritual guide and spiritual father. But the problem was that my passport expired already a few years ago, and even before monastery I was going to Yugoslavian consulate and trying to extend my passport. But since there was a war in Yugoslavia and I was not serving army when I was there, the consul told me, well, Mr. Yovanovich, you are not allowed to have new passport. You're just going to have a document that you can travel from United States to Yugoslavia, and that's it. And of course that was absolutely clear to me that if I go there they would take me right straight in the war. And I of course didn't want to fight. For what reason? For this stupid, insane war that was on in my homeland. So I said, no thanks, I'm not going back under these conditions. But now the war was over and I really couldn't stay in America anymore. I had to go back and I had to find a serious monastery with serious monks and with serious experienced elders, spiritual people that could help me on my way towards, first of all, healing my soul and then proceeding more in spiritual life. But since I didn't know what to do, there was a Greek lady. She was a wife of one priest from New York, and she used to live there, and she was Greek and very nice lady. She was like maybe at that time about 60 and I was 31. So we acquainted, and sometimes we would talk when she would come to the monastery, and I was telling her how terribly I'm suffering from these fears, and a few times she invited me for lunch at her place. So the abbot gave me his blessing, so sometimes I would go there, be with her, sometimes I would help her in the garden, fix something in the house, because was a teacher at the St. Vladimir's seminary in Yonkers. He was a theologian. So she was basically alone, and her children, her son was in Washington D.C. and her daughter was in New York City. So once I told her that I have to go to Greece and to find somebody who can help me, but I have this damn problem with my passport, and she told me, well, you know, if they don't want to extend your passport in Yugoslavian embassy, maybe my son can help. I said, who is your son? She said, my son is an international lawyer and he works in Greek embassy in Washington, D.C. Maybe he can help you. I said, well, maybe. Call him. She said, well, I'll call him and we will see. So in a couple of days, she fulfilled her promise. So she called me back in the monastery and she said, Brother Alexander, guess what? I spoke to my son and he said that this is not going to be a problem, that he will help me. So I have to go to Washington, D.C. to meet him, and then we will go together to Yugoslavian embassy, and he's sure that he can help me because I'm a monk now. I'm almost like a priest in black garments, black robes, and so I just have to go there and we will see. So it was a great encouragement. It was very good news to me because it looked like that maybe I will finally get my passport and then that I will go back to my homeland, to old continent. So next week I had a blessing from Abbot and I went to, I have taken a bus to Washington, D.C. So finally we met. He was employed in Greek embassy on some pretty important place. And when we met, he was very kind. And he told me, well, you know, we cannot do this today. I'm very busy. Come tomorrow and we'll go. So I didn't know what to do. So I went back to my small, cheap hotel that I rented a room over there. And so I went out for a long walk. There was a very beautiful avenue called Embassy Row in Washington, D.C. And I have seen there many beautiful buildings and embassies and residences. And there was an episode. There was a beautiful mosque over there. I think it was made by, it belonged to some of those rich Arab countries. It was extremely beautiful, but of course it was a Muslim mosque. But still, it attracted me a lot, so I entered in. And there was a happening that once I will talk about it, but now it's not time for that. So finally, next day, I went back to the Greek embassy early in the morning, and the Greek guy, he greeted me. So we went together to Yugoslavian embassy, and to my great joy, I have received finally new passport. So now I was free to travel. I was free to leave United States after 6 years of many beautiful and sometimes sad events that I went through. It appeared to me that my stay in United States, actually it was a whole life to me, because 6 years, those 6 years were full of intense way of living. So many things happened to me, so many things I have discovered, so many good people I met, and everything. Basically, I have matured in the United States. Those years from 27 until 33, very critical and very important for maturing for a person. And those years I have spent in the United States. So although I was Serbian, born Serbian in Yugoslavia, I have considered myself as, in a way, American as well. Because, I was formed in those important years of maturing, living in United States. But now I will use this opportunity to tell about my visit to this Muslim mosque. It was such a beautiful building made out of bright snow-white marble with pieces of deep blue ceramics with beautiful garden around it, and there was a lot of Venetian glass incorporated in the walls of this beautiful building. So I entered the yard of the mosque, and the garden was beautiful flowers, and it was empty, nobody was there. So and thoughts were telling me, why are you entering this mosque? It's a Muslim place. You're Orthodox Christian. You don't have to do anything here. There is nothing for you at this place. Leave. But I thought to myself, well, I'll go inside. It's so beautiful. Nothing can happen to me. Finally, I'm free to taste everything, to see everything. I hope God will not be mad on me. So this way I have opposed to those thoughts that they were telling me that it's not clever to enter this Islamic prayer house, because it's not place for an Orthodox Christian. But still I was stubborn, and still I was not yet experienced enough to realize that those thoughts were coming from the very Lord. But then the Lord became silent. He said, okay, if you want to do it. So I came to the entrance, and I have seen few pairs of shoes outside, because Muslim people, they take off their shoes when they enter their mosque. So I took off my sandals, and barefoot, only with socks, I entered the mosque. I went in, and I have seen that this mosque was even more beautiful from inside. A lot of those arabesques on the walls and on the ceiling. The ceiling was deep blue with gold stars painted on it, and beautiful ornaments all over. And the floor was made out of several types of wood, and this wooden floor was also adorned with ornaments. There were a lot of pillars holding the ceiling all over, and I was watching all around, and not immediately, but after a few minutes, I have seen there was a man there, walking all around, walking all the time, not sitting, not standing, but walking and chanting something. So I thought it is some kind of prayer. He was walking all over around these pillars, and a few times he came just next to me, but he didn't take any look at me. He was just walking and chanting, holding some small book in his hands. So finally I realized that it was enough for me to be in the mosque, and now I should go out. So when I went out, I put my sandals on, but then I have noticed a pair of people that they were not there before when I came. They came later when I entered, and it was a black guy and a white girl. They were together, and they were sitting on the stairs right next to the entrance. So when I went out, they have seen me, and they were puzzled who I am, and probably they knew that I'm a Christian, and what I'm looking in, and what I'm asking, what I'm searching in a mosque. So they told me hello, and I told them hello as well. And they said, who are you? I said, well, I am an Orthodox Christian monk. And they said, monk? Oh, really? What do you do? I said, well, I have dedicated myself to the Lord, and I dedicated my life to prayer. And they said, oh, really? You pray? We pray as well. And I've seen that they were American, but Muslims. And then the girl told me, how do you pray? And I told her, well, there are several ways of prayer, but basically I like to pray mentally. It resembles, for example, let's say a Buddhist meditation. We sit or stand, and we repeat in our heart with mind a certain prayer, especially during the night. It is very important for us Christians. And she said, oh yeah? Well, you know, I pray as well. I pray a lot during the night. And then all of a sudden she stared at my eyes, directly at my eyes, and she asked me, looking very serious, do you see angels when you pray? Do angels come and stay around you, be with you? Are they together with you when you pray? And I was a little bit surprised with this question, and I told her, well, you know, I don't know if the angels are there. We do not see them. It's not that usual for us that angels come from the heavens and pray together with us. She said, what do you mean it's unusual? They always come and they pray together with me when I pray. And I said, and she told me, and they are so beautiful. I said, really? How do they look like? And she told me, well, they have wings with very colorful wings with many colors, and they are all together. They are together with me, and they pray, and they have beautiful garments, and they have beautiful faces, and they look so nice, and they sing with me. I said, well, you know, I have to admit that some of the Holy Fathers in the history of our church, they were granted to see the angels, but not every average Christian is allowed, is given to him to see an angels, because sometimes it can be very dangerous, because Satan can take a form of angel in order to seduce us, to delude us. And our Holy Fathers say that we are not called to receive every vision of an angel. but to be very careful and very often we have to refuse these visions, because if we continue to accept these visions, sometimes we can get in deep delusion, and sometimes we can even lose our mind and definitely to undergo a damage. And at that moment, she became so enraged, she became so red in her face, and she said, "What do you mean? We have to refuse angels? No, angels, those are real angels, they come to me. And the God is sending, the Allah is sending those angels to me. What do you mean?" And she became so angry that I was so surprised. What a strange change happened to her, because in the beginning she was so kind and nice, and it was very unpleasant at that moment. So I said, "Well, I'm sorry, maybe I'm wrong, maybe you're right, I have to go now." But at that moment, this black guy addressed me and he said, well, tell me one thing." I said, "What thing?" He said, "Well, what about Virgin Mary? Is this really that she gave birth without being with man? You know what I mean?" I said, "Well, yes, that's how the Bible says." And he said, she didn't do this." And then, at this moment, he made a movement with his arms and with his body, like when somebody is having a sexual intercourse with somebody. And this guy, this black young man, he was saying this for Virgin Mary, that is this really possible that she didn't do that? And at that moment, it was so terrible, so bad from this man. And he really came into the center of our holiness. He made a blow in the very heart of Christian dogma, which is ever Virgin Mary. So at that moment I have realized that I really made a great mistake, that I came there, and that those people were so mean, and this man was so mean, and he made such a terrible sign with a movement with his body, holiness of Virgin Mary. So I just stopped talking anything to them, and I went straight out towards exit of the mosque. But to my great disappointment, I have realized it was somehow too late, because I was so spoiled with such a terrible conversation with these two people, that up to this moment, when he made this movement with his body and with his arms, at that very moment, I felt something so stinking, some terrible stench came to me from them, from this man, from this mean man. And it was like I was in the middle of some garbage or some terrible stinking place. So I went very fast to leave and to get to the exit, but so went out on the street, and only once more I have taken a look towards them, and I have seen his terrible satanic smile on his face. He was smiling and looking at me, how he made me to run away from them. But of course I have deserved it. It was my mistake. I was looking and I was asking for a devil, as we say in Serbian language. So anyway, I went out on the street, but I was feeling so terrible, and I couldn't expel this terrible stench from my nose. It was like I put my head in the toilet bowl, and I cannot explain what a terrible stench was in my head and in my forehead and in my nostrils. Something absolutely completely opposite of those beautiful fragrances that I used to feel in the monastery early in the morning after the whole night prayer. This stench was coming from the bottom of hell. It was hell stench. So when I went back to my hotel room, I was so disappointed and I was so mad on myself. So I came down to my knees, and kneeling, I was praying to the Lord, feeling deep repentance and pain in my heart, saying, "Oh Lord, forgive me. You warned me in the beginning. You warned me and told me, why are you entering such a place? It is not place for you. Do not go inside." But I was so stubborn, I was so stupid. And I went in and I was so soiled in there. "Lord, please help me. Forgive me. But this couldn't go so easily. So for about 3 full days, I was feeling this stench, and it was always around me. So I didn't know anymore, am I stinking or something is stinking around me? So this smell was so bad, this smell was so terrible, and I have realized that demons are emanating the demons are giving out this kind of terrible smell, this kind of terrible stench. So I have realized, oh my God, it must be really absolutely terrible in hell with such a stench. Please, Lord, help me and forgive me to get rid of this. So finally, after 3 full days, finally this terrible smell departed from me. And I told myself, oh, please, God, help me to realize, to see in advance, to recognize your warnings, because the conscientious is always telling us what to do and what not to do. And when we listen to our conscientious, when we listen to it, it helps us. But when we do not listen, we go through many damages. But thank God I have received my passport, and so I went back to Pennsylvania, to my monastery, and I have informed the abbot of the monastery that I have to leave. I have received my passport, so I'm leaving for good. So they were not glad to hear that. They thought I'm going to stay there. So they were not very nice to me. But I understand them. It was nothing bad, but they were not happy as I was happy. This is the point. So finally, the last day of my stay in the monastery of St. Tikhon of Zadonsk in Pennsylvania came, and I said goodbye and farewell to everybody, and I had taken a bus from Scranton towards New York. So since I have given my apartment, now I have called my good old friend Ninoslav, and he told me that I can stay at his place because he had a pretty big apartment in Brooklyn, close to Coney Island in Brooklyn, and he was waiting for me at bus station, Greyhound bus station at New York City. So finally I found myself in New York again with my beloved friend Ninoslav. But since I didn't have any money, now I had to make some money, I had to earn some money, and I didn't know how to do that. But thank God Ninoslav had a van, similar like I used to have before, and I proposed him that we could make some movings with a van, because I had experience with moving business, and since he was working as a teacher in elementary school, his salary was not that great, and he told me, well, now it's summer, the school is off, so this is a good idea, maybe we can work for a couple of months and make money. So it was a great idea, and we started to work like I used to do before. We made a few thousands of flyers, and we put them all over the city, and people started to call us. So we were working together as really good friends, and the money was coming in finally. And but I have to say that those fears were still with me, and whenever I would stay, I would be alone in my room or somewhere. I was fighting with them, and I was saying, and I was praying to Lord, oh Lord, please, am I going ever to be freed from these fears? My life changed so much. Before, I was so full of joy, full of happiness, full of your love, and now I'm suffering. What happened with me? And very often this thought of death would come to me. It looked to me that everything was dying around me, that everybody will die, that I am going to die. There is no more life anymore. It was such a terrible depression in myself. It was so hard. I just couldn't recognize what really happened with me. Is it really possible that this is coming to me because I was thinking, I was having high opinion on me, and the thoughts were telling me, you always have to be humble. You always have to be kind to everybody, not to have high opinion on you. This is what happened to you. This is the result of your high opinion of yourself. And because you were looking from the heights of some imaginary accomplishment, spiritual accomplishment, you were looking from high above to other brothers in the monastery. And that's why this happened to you. So I understood these thoughts were saying truth. And I said, well, God, for the sake of your love, I will go through this, and I believe you will help me. So finally, I have made enough money to repay some old debts and to buy airplane ticket to Athens, Greece. I have already made decision. I'm going to Greece and I'm going to Mount Athos. And I will stay there and I will continue my monastic life in Mount Athos, in this beautiful, mysterious monastic republic. Finally, my stay, my life in the United States came to its end. And as I was saying farewell to my homeland, Serbia, 6 years ago, saying goodbye to streets, houses, Belgrade birds, people, to my memories, to my youth. Now I was saying goodbye to my life in New York, to all these good and bad things that happened to me. But all those things helped me to become a more serious person, more matured person, and most important of all, that I have become an Orthodox Christian, and as a crown of everything, that I have become, although not yet monk, but that I have become a novice, and that I have discovered the real way, the real road towards living God, creator of the universe. Finally, this day, the day of departure came, and as I was greeting all my friends and family 6 years ago back in Belgrade, now I was saying goodbye and farewell to my good friends, and Ninoslav have taken me. He drove me by his van to Kennedy Airport, and finally, and for the last time in our life in New York, we hugged each other, kissed and said goodbye, and hopefully we'll see each other again in future. About this future we will continue in our next meeting. Goodbye and thank you. Thank you for listening Radio Svetigora, the radio station of the Serbian Orthodox Church, Diocese of Monte Negro and the Seaside. Blessed by His High Eminence, Metropolitan Amphilohie.